Okay. So welcome again. Today I'm really happy to present you, to give you an overview of our cost action project, FruitCREWS. I've shared with you the program in the email, so I think you are more or less aligned with it. I will start with a general presentation, a general overview of how we intend to proceed with the next activity. So with the starting of the activities. As you know, this project has 5 working groups. What we have foreseen together with the core group is to schedule one meeting in the next weeks, in the next months or couple of months maximum for each working group. Of course, it would be nice to work on the goals of the action in presence or in persons, but that would be really impossible. And for this reason, our activities will be mostly online through, exchanges in online meetings or or through email. But of course, there will be also activities in presence when it will be possible. So, working group 1 is about physiological parameters and sensing technologies. And for this working group, we have foresee a first online meeting on January 26. All the members, all the people who have applied to this working group will receive an online invitation. Anyway, if meanwhile you still have to apply or you want to apply to more working groups, you can still do it because WUGI applications are still open on the eCost platform. The leader for WUGI 1 is Pasquale Losciale from the University of Bari. I don't know if Pasquale, you are online.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, Pasquale. I'm sharing my screen, so I don't see you, but I hope everybody sees you. Then we have working group 2 about models. The leader is Katie Steppe from the University of Ghent. I think many of you know her. And the first online meeting will be on February 6.
Hello, everybody.
Good. Working group 3 will be about irrigation scheduling. This working group will be led by Martin Mezzaros from WSUO from Czech Republic. And the first online meeting is foreseen for March 7.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Martin, and thanks. Okay, then we have WUGI 4 about decision support systems, advantages and constraints. And the WUGI leader in this case is Alon Ben-Gal from the Volcani Institute in Israel.
Hi, everyone. Our first meeting is next week at the exact same time as this meeting, and an invitation will be sent out immediately after this meeting.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Alon. Okay, then last but not least, WUGI 5. The WUGI leader is Diego Intrigliolo from the XIC Valencia in Spain.
Hello, thanks a lot, Brunella, and thanks a lot. So here we are.
Thank you, Diego. And for this, for this working group, the meeting will be on February 20th. The meetings are always at 3 Central Europe time, so exactly the same time. As I said, the applications are still open in eCost, and they will remain open throughout the whole project duration. So if you have colleagues who might be interested in joining, they are welcome. So the 5 working group leaders plus myself will be part of the core group of FruitCREWS, but the core group will be completed by 2 other key figures, 3 actually key figures, who are the scientific communication coordinator, who is Vladimir Merkasik, sorry for the pronunciation, Vladimir, from Innocence, Serbia.
Hello, everybody. Nice to have you all here. And just I will use the opportunity to tell you that I sent the message to all in the chat to join our social media channels. That is really important because that will be a way to share all important information beside the emails and anything. So please just follow us. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Vladimir. And then we have our grant awarding coordinator, who is George Manganaris from Cyprus University.
Good evening, everybody.
Thank you, George. And then last but not least, of course, the FruitCREWS co-chair, who is Virginia Hernandez Santana from XIC in Sevilla.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome.
Okay, so basically the 9 of us will form the FruitCREWS core group, and you can contact us for any need or specific question you might have regarding the specific aspects we deal about. Now I'm happy to leave the floor to Virginia, who will go on presenting you the working groups.
Thanks, Brunella, and good afternoon again to everyone. In the following graphs, I'm going to show the composition of the different working groups. As Brunella said, we have 5 of them, 5 WGs, composed over 150 people from 37 countries. So that means that we reach a good number of countries all over the world. And these countries include coast countries. For example, Italy and Spain are the 2 that have like the highest highest number of representatives. Then we also have a representation from inclusiveness target countries, or ITC, such as Portugal or Turkey, for example. And we also have near neighbor countries, for example, Tunisia. There are many participants also. And we have also a 4th category that is international countries, such as US and Australia. Next. Here you can see the different WGs or working groups, and here I wanted to show the gender distribution within the working groups. And to the contrary of the feeling that you can get from seeing the speakers today, the female representation is lower than the male representation. So we need to invite more women to participate in our cost action. Next. The age is more balanced, although as you can see with the yellow, the young researchers are fewer than the senior ones, which are the ones over 40. Next. And here is the last figure I wanted to show. And here you can see the choices that the different participants have made regarding the different working groups. With the light green, you see that many of you have chosen to work in only one WG, but there are many more who have chosen to work to participate in more than one working group. 1, 2, 3, 4 are, and even there are over 20 people who have selected the choice of participate in the 5 WGs. This is important because it will facilitate the working flow of the different outputs of the different working groups that Brunella is going to explain, and Katy Steppe is going to illustrate with a practical example later. So the floor is yours again, Brunella. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Virginia. Thanks a lot. Yeah, as Virginia was saying, the idea today is to, share with you in general an overview of the concept within FruitCREWS, so where we want to go and through which steps, so that you might consider also applying to other WGs, to have, a better overview of the project. In case you want to apply to another WG, then you can write me, because I think the system is closed. Once you have applied, then it doesn't allow to modify, but you can write me and I can reopen your application. So here you see the 5 working groups I was talking about before. And now I will show you the outputs we expect from this working group. So for working group 1, physiological parameters and sensing technologies, the idea is to identify the best, the most suitable physiological parameters to detect tree water status in different crops, but also to identify the sensing technologies that might be adoptable and that might help us monitoring those parameters. Those parameters, the idea is that those parameters might be inputs of models, of process-based models that can help us understanding the physiology of the different crops, and that can be implemented into decision support system for irrigation scheduling. The outputs from the model needs to help us quantify the irrigation needs, and with the help also of all the existing studies that have been done so far regarding the irrigation protocol. So the irrigation scheduling working group will take care to find out which are actually the most suitable irrigation protocols to improve water use efficiency in the different environments. Meanwhile, working group 4, it's about decision support systems, actually existing decision support system. We all know that there are plenty of decision support systems on the market already, decision support system for irrigation scheduling. Unfortunately, not many of them are applied on a large scale. So the idea is to try to find out which are the constraints that prevent this application, and to use the outputs from these projects, so outputs from WG1, WG2, and WG3, in order to improve existing decision support systems, but also to give guidelines, for the future development of decision support systems. And in fact, all the outputs will feed the final working group 5, which is probably one of the most important working group, because it will collect all the results and it will provide feedbacks, to industry and to, in general, stakeholders in general, on possible improvements on these decision support systems. Working group 5, based on the results of the project, will also try to provide inputs to policymakers in order to improve the adoption of these systems, to improve irrigation water use efficiency, but also to identify research priorities for the future, so to start getting organized for future research. So this is the general idea of FruitCREWS, and based on this general idea, I give the floor to Katie Steppe for her seminar. So this seminar is an example of how we would like to proceed. Please, Katie, I will stop the sharing of my screen. I hope I can do it.
Okay. And
Okay, I think it's okay.
no.
Perfect.
Yeah, I was pushing the wrong button. Okay, you see me on my screen?
Yes, perfectly.
Oh, okay, and you hear me. Okay, good. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to give this example. We have given it the title From Physiological Indicators to Modeling and Decision Support, how FruitCREWS could make irrigation scheduling more efficient. And the idea is, as Brunella nicely presented in the previous slide, that through an inspiring example, or two examples in fact, that I show you how potentially we connect work group 1 and 2 and 3 together. And of course, once we have that, we go then to 4 and 5. But in this presentation, I will do the connection between 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so to do that, in work group 1, we will use sensors. We will derive physiological indicators. So we basically want to screen the plant. And if we screen the plant, then and you would be able to look through the plant, and you see that there are many processes happening and in the stem, for example, but also in the leaves. And by measuring and understanding the processes through mechanistic models, we can make the connection between what we measure and what we can learn from that. So we all know, if you put a sap flow sensor on a tree, that you can measure the sap flow, you can measure the sap flow dynamics. And if you integrate in the area under the graph, that you can quantify how much water a plant needs. And of course, if we talk about irrigation scheduling, that will be an important one, because we need to supply sufficient water to the plant. And a good way to do that is to listen to the plant, what it needs, and then you have a kind of a plant-based irrigation that can be applied. So sap flow sensors are great tools for that. And if you then combine the sap flow sensor with a dendrometer, then you get additional information. So the red line is the pattern that you receive when you measure with a dendrometer, shrinkage and swelling. Why is there a shrinkage? Because the transpiration is larger than the water uptake in the morning, so you get a shrinkage. And when then in the evening the uptake is larger than the loss of water, then you get a swelling. But if you look closely to these patterns, then you see that the swelling is larger than the shrinkage. So that means that you have an additional part coming from real growth. So turgor-driven growth. So the water relations drive the growth of the stem when the turgor in the stem is larger than a certain threshold. And if that is so, then depending on the extensibility of the stem, we get an irreversible dimensional change. So that means that if we combine these two sensors, that we have basically a real-time plant monitor. So you see here sap flow of a certain species. You see here the stem diameter variations. And then we can derive, if you collect data like this, you can derive indeed, for example, daily water use. You can derive physiological indicators, maximum daily shrinkage that many of us know, daily growth can be derived, tree water deficit can be derived. And in work group 1, one could look to these kind of indicators to then say, okay, the plant needs water. For example, here in this case, tree water deficit, you see that the plant does not grow during the night anymore. So one could think maybe this plant is stressed and we need to give it water if it is, for example, 2 days below this threshold. So, or if tree water deficit increases. So one can indeed think of these kind of actions to base irrigation scheduling on. Then we can go a step further. So in work group 1, we concentrate on the sensors and all the indicators that we can derive. But in work group 2, we will try to understand the mechanisms that underlie these physiological processes. So if I go one step back, why indeed is the stem growing here and why is it not growing here? Why is there more shrinkage? So it's all linked together. Therefore, also the more sensors you have, the more you understand and can combine it. So you can then feed it and create these mechanistic models. So therefore, I warmly welcome everybody to working group 2. So then we can make such kind of models. And I will illustrate the power of it by the combination from work group 1 and work group 2, because if you combine both, then you can go to the next step to advanced control algorithms. And in our case, in case of FruitCREWS, that means better irrigation scheduling algorithms. So I will illustrate this with a first example where we have the stem diameter as a tool to say we will irrigate or not, or to detect stress. That is basically the first step, to see whether the plant feels itself happy or not. And as an input for such a model, we will use measured sap flow. And then we will compare measured stem diameter with the modeled stem diameter. But of course, if we want to have control algorithms, we might want to predict the future. And to predict the future, we replace the measurements by weather conditions. And from the weather conditions, we predict the transpiration. And then we feed the model with the predicted transpiration. And then once we have the real measurements of sap flow, we can compare it. I will directly illustrate it here in more detail. So here you see, for example, you put the sensors on, sap flow sensors and the dendrometers, and you collect, the first thing is to collect a couple of days of data. So in this case, 4 days of data. And then you run the model. And luckily we did a good job because the model describes the measured data, right? Now we have a calibrated model and we want to use it. So what we do is we now take the next day, so day 5, the weather predictions. We calculate the expected transpiration based on the transpiration model for that species, and we can predict what the diameter should do in those conditions. So that is the orange line that you see here. And then you have to visualize now that you are in an online situation, and every moment of the day, a new point will appear here from the real measurements. So that is the black line. And as long as the black line stays within the error band of the model, we are fine, because that is what the model predicted. And then for the next day, we do the same thing. We move the window, we calibrate the model, we predict again what the next day should be based on the previous calibrated model. And here you see again, we don't have a problem because the measurements are within the error band of the model. So basically here we use the model as a kind of a control line, whether the plant has stress or not. So these are non-stress situations for which I have shown here. But here you see an example of daily calibrations. And here, for example, you see that the measurement comes out of the error band. So therefore you see here this red dot. You can then make a subtraction of the model simulation and the measurements, and then you see that on those 2 days that the plant had stress, because the model predicted that it should behave like this in those given environments, but it did not. The real measurements, they say, no, there is a larger shrinkage. So if you would calculate the maximum daily shrinkage, for example, you would see that it is here also a bit larger than on the previous days. But the good thing is here that you get information whether indeed you have stress. And due, in this case, the higher stress that we had was due to high air temperature and low air humidity. So atmospheric drought stress can be detected like that. Here we then made the plant suffer by not irrigating it anymore. And then you see in the first days, the plant, it's a ficus plant, so therefore it's really resistant, so it keeps growing even without water. And it's only at this moment in time, again, you see here a little bit of red, that we can detect stress. So this system gives you, okay, the plant now suffers from stress. The measurements are different than the simulations. And you see, if you then do not take action, that the stress becomes larger and larger and larger. So that you also see here, and that gives then this window. Well, here we decided, because also there was some wilting of the leaves, or the first signs, let's say. So we give it water, and then you see indeed that you have a recovery. So that means indeed that as soon as you give the plant water, you see the diameter variation, that it even improves better than what we predict. And then it takes a couple of more days before it is again fully healthy. Now you can think, okay, if this is the visual sign of that the plant had stress, while the sensors were already given many days before that something was going on in this plant. If we do the same analysis with maximum daily shrinkage, for example, we detected the stress from this day. So the model and sensor system detected stress or anomalies in the system 2 days before the maximum daily shrinkage. And then it's up to the grower to decide, okay, what do we define by stress? Because here we see indeed that the diameter, that there is no growth anymore, and that it even starts to decline slightly. But the you need then to find a way to define, okay, what do I as a grower define as stress, and where I will give the water back to the plant or start the irrigation again. Because, for example, assume in grapevines, you might want to have some stress to increase the quality of the fruit. And then it's maybe not the idea that we continuously keep track of the perfect growth line, because maybe then you are you grow too vegetatively, for example. So that is all possible with these kind of tools. So I will go now one step further to work package 3, let's say, because in the past we developed a software tool for automatic irrigation at the faculty, where we used plant sensors and models, but then really to open and close a valve depending on the stress situation. So again, as an input for the model, we use sensor data. And that is, I think, if we can have that also in FruitCREWS, that we not only have measurements, but can combine it with models, then we can go that step further, so that we have this integration between these different working groups. So another plant sensor that you also can use separately, but preferably integrated. And here we use that for calibrating a mechanistic model. And then the output of the model gives us the water status. You have heard that Brunella stressed that in work group 1. We want to look at what are the best indicators for defining and giving an idea on the hydraulic status of the plant. So water potential is still one of the state-of-the-art, let's say, parameters to do that. And so the idea was, because we all know that water potential measurements are not that easy, and when we did this study, it was even not yet possible to measure it continuously. Now it is, for example, with ICT stem psychrometers and other sensors came on the market. But in that time, it was not. The only way was to measure with a pressure chamber. So we said, okay, we can measure with continuous measurements. We feed it into a model and we predict the water potential. So that was the whole idea. So here you see these continuous data. You see sap flow data. It is on an apple tree. So therefore, you have sunny days, you have more cloudy days. So therefore, you see these dynamics in the sap flow pattern. And then these are the measured, this on the same plant, the measured diameter variations. Again, a sunny day results in more shrinkage of the stem. And you see a slight decline in the growth. That's not due to stress, but we were developing this, this tool. And we started in beginning of the summer, but like with every tool that you develop, there are, it's a bit trial and error and trying again. And the first time that it really worked was beginning of end of August, beginning of September, and then the tree was already in its sigmoid end phase of the growth. So that is the reason why you see here not a linear growth, but a flattened growth. Of course, this hampered a little bit our initial idea, because we said, okay, we have an ideal model, we thought, and we calibrated with one calibration. But then you see, if you do that, that you overestimate the measurements. So that put us before a new challenge. And then we said, okay, we cannot work with one calibration set of the model. The parameters need to be dynamic. And also here we used then this moving window. Well, basically it came from here, the idea to work with a moving window. And if you do that, then you can nicely capture the dynamics. So that is also what we saw, for example, is that the elasticity of the cells of the stem and the living cells in the stem, that they change over time due to the fact that they get older. And if you fix that parameter, this extensibility, as a fixed parameter in the model, then you will, you cannot capture the reality. By allowing to change it in function of time, you can do that. So that means if you use such an approach, that indeed you can keep track of the correct measurements. So we were very happy because the model is working, and we can predict with the model the stem diameter variation. So that means we have input measurements, sap flow, we have a calibrated model, and then we can come to the output. So the model gives us water potential measurements that at that moment could not be measured continuously, but can be simulated continuously. And then here you see the output. And of course, there you have people that are pro modeling, but also contra modeling. So if you see that, then some people say, you can indeed simulate everything with the model. So therefore we did a calibration, a validation test of the water potential. And then you see here with the pressure chamber that we could capture what the model was predicting. So we were quite confident that the measurements of sap flow were correct, the measurements of stem diameter were correct, that the model was correctly calibrated, and that we confidently could predict water potential in the stem as a water stress indicator. Then the next step is, okay, if you want to have then an irrigation tool, you need to know when do I need to water and how much do I need to water. So that are the main two challenges that one has. And the when do we need to water, we based on water potential measurements. And we said, okay, if the water potential goes below -1, we water. And that comes then to basically the conclusion. So when to water, when the simulated water potential drops below -1. And why -1? For the apple trees, we saw that if the water potential goes below -1, that after that, the photosynthesis starts to decline. And if the photosynthesis decline, you might think that there might be an effect on the performance of the plant. That was, in our case, in these apple trees, that was also at the moment that the diameter did not grow anymore, but was not continuously shrinking. So therefore, from the previous one of the previous slides, this pattern can be applied in a very innovative way, let's say. So if you know, okay, when do I need to irrigate? That is every time when the water potential drops below this value, and how much. Then we used, and then I'll go back. Then we used the measured sap flow. And for example, if we measured that the water potential was here going under the threshold, then it was all the integrated values from the up to the previous irrigation. So that means if we come back now here, so that means in the first irrigation is basically the largest, because that covers the night plus part of the end of the previous day, or sometimes even the full day. For example, here you do not cross the threshold, so it will accumulate all the water that was since the previous irrigation event, and then during that day it gives 2 times more water. And that is then the irrigation under the sap flow profile between these times and these times. And so in total, the plant gets that amount of water. And so that is a plant-based irrigation tool. And if we compare that with permanentite or radiation steered irrigation, then we could save more than 40% of water, which is quite substantial. Definitely, if you think water is getting more and more scarce, so this could be a way to combine the sensors, the models, and to have then the action. And to prove you that indeed we managed to really water the plant, I will show you a short movie to end the presentation. You will see that it was with the highest technology of that we had at that moment available, and also Dirk, that is here in the meeting, helped me with making this montage in the time when we did this research. I hope you can also hear the music. Is that the case?
No,
Or not?
no music.
No, we can't hear it. We
No.
see it, but we can't
Okay.
hear it.
No music.
Yeah, no, but then I don't know. Yeah, then just enjoy the movie. So here you see the irrigation pipes towards the apple trees, and now you will see that water will be supplied, and what you see now, that is the amount of water that has been integrated under the sap flow profile since the last irrigation event. And of course, it's a plant-based irrigation system, so we need every drop that we can get. And then here you see the dendrometer and the sap flow sensor and the tensiometer, because we also wanted to compare it with other indicators. Okay. Then the sensors that we applied, a dendrometer and a sap flow sensor on the apple trees. But also microclimate, like I said, we compared it to permanentite estimation. So here you see the PAR sensor. And then our core system, computers that you don't find now anymore. So this is the data logger, the computer, and then online it was simulating and checking the water potential. And when the water potential went under the threshold, the water was supplied. And this is the end of the movie. And excuse me that, because I could hear the sound, and yeah, it's a pity that you could not, but no worries. Okay, so this is the end, and I hope, yeah, if there are questions, I'm of course here available, and I hope it can inspire us as a group, as a crew, to combine indeed the different working groups, that we need to talk to each other to come to the next step of tools that can help our growers. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Kathy, for the really impressive seminar that you gave us, and I think you gave us a really interesting example of where we could go, you know, with FruitCREWS. We have many sensing technologies available, from soil sensors to plant sensor to proximal sensing to remote sensing, you know, and also many models available. And so I think that we really have a great potential, you know, to really move forward in this discipline. Okay, so before the question session, which I would like to leave for the end of the meeting, let me please provide you with some more information. So please, all your questions also to Kathy and to general aspects of the project for 5 more minutes, because I would like to give you a few more information, practical information on some opportunities that we all have. I'm referring to the mobility opportunities, especially for young researchers. As you know, one very nice aspects of cost action is that they fund the mobility of young students through short-term scientific missions, so through exchanges of young researchers for periods from, let's say, 15 days to 1 month or 2 months to another lab, okay? And this is one of the opportunities we have as a management committee. We have decided to invest more, so we have 2,000 euros, 12,000 euros dedicated to this, and applications are now open. Then there can be also other opportunities like ITC conference and dissemination conference, but for these two we have less budget dedicated. To get to know the rules and all the specific, let's say, approaches and patterns to get there, I invite you to consult the cost action annotated rules, because I'm not even that expert about the whole process. But anyway, the calls are open now. And in order to apply for the calls, you have to go to the eCost website and select a grant application, then select FruitCREWS as a cost action. You should be registered as a cost member, but not necessarily, you should not necessarily be part of FruitCREWS. So even, for example, one of your students or PhD students or postdocs who is not part of FruitCREWS can apply for these exchanges. The idea is to exploit this opportunity to move forward with the work that we need to do for the working group. So the subject of the exchanges will be preferably subjects related to FruitCREWS. So maybe since we will need, for example, to merge different data sets regarding different physiological parameters, so the people who will exchange will preferably work and contribute to this part. So after you go to the grant application, then you select the opportunity that you intend to apply to. So for short-term scientific mission, you select this, but then there is also virtual mobility grant, ITC conference grant, and dissemination conference grants. You can, unfortunately, we don't have much time, so I don't have the time to explain into details the different aspects of the different opportunities. I would say the one where we put more budget is the short-term scientific mission grant. So basically exchanges of young students among different labs. As I said, for any practical doubts or question regarding the running of FruitCREWS, of the cost action, reimbursement, applications for the short-term scientific missions and everything, please refer to the documents that you can download from eCost, from the COST official website. In particular, the annotated rules for cost action is the most important documents that summarize and includes all the most important rules. Then for the grants, so for the exchanges grants, you can also make reference to the grant awarding user guide. And of course, then if you still need help, don't hesitate to contact us. Okay. So before the questions, let me thank you. Would like to thank Kathy, but also all of you for participating. And I renew my invitation to join the working group meetings in the next few weeks and months. And here you can find the links to the social media that have just been created. Actually, we still don't have a logo, we still don't have a website because we just started, we just signed the grant agreement 2 days ago. So we are now ready to start with all official activities, but so far we don't have a logo yet, but information will be shared through the social media already. Last comment, for the next meetings, you will probably receive an invitation from official invitation from eCost, even for the online meeting. We couldn't do this for this meeting because, as I said, the grant agreement was not signed yet, so it was not the system was not ready. But for the next meetings, you will receive this invitation, and maybe we could also upload the invitation for this one, but I'm not sure. I need to check that. Okay, so ready. I think I said everything, but I asked the core group if I forgot something, so please integrate. And if not, we are ready for questions. Any question? Yes, I see Murat.
Yeah.
Murat.
Thank you, Brunella. I have a question for Kathy. Do you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I was just curious about while you were making your models, were you measuring both soil and plant water potential or just plant water potential?
In the models that I showed, it's a plant water potential, but if you run the model, you cannot pass by well, not the soil water potential, but maybe even more important, the water potential that is near the roots. So we yeah, in these models there is also a link to measured soil water potential, but that then calculates what the water potential near the roots is, and then you have through Van den Honderd the uptake of water and the water transport.
Right,
yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Another question from let me check because I see many, so I need to check the. Okay, so I see Ecomatic. One question from Ecomatic.
Hi, Kathy. It's one question for you also. So you showed us data from and the small movie from the plant-based irrigation, and you had several plants. So for me, it would be interesting. The model was calculated for each individual plant, I assume.
Yeah.
How large was the variation between the models? Because a very frequent question is, do I need this kind of sensor equipment for each and every tree, which would be very expensive? So I know your setup was quite homogeneous, potted plants and stuff, but how large was the difference even in this context?
Yeah. And that's also a question that I often get: how many sensors do we need to install to capture the homogeneity or the heterogeneity? In principle, it depends a bit on what you want to do. For example, for stress detection, then if you compare then the different plants, even if they are a bit larger or smaller, then basically the signal that there is stress comes almost all at the same time. But of course, if you want to do the irrigation based on the plant itself, and it would be a very heterogeneous system, and with large plants and small plants, then of course, yeah, then it's logically that the larger plants will consume more water and need more water back. So it all depends a bit on indeed how homogeneous is it. And what we advise is indeed that you have a look, and also remote sensing, for example, is part of our FruitCREWS team. So you could then think of with remote sensing, like scanning for example, with thermal cameras for the heterogeneity across the field, and then put the sensors on a couple of key plants that represent then the heterogeneity within your field. So that could be a nice coupling between plant-based with individual plants, but then like a kind of an overview from the remote sensing. In addition to what the remote sensing then of course can also offer is for example, transpiration measurements that can also feed that into the model, so you can go in different ways.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, then I see Estefania.
Hi everyone, thank you very much for all the presentation and everything. Kathy, very nice work that you are doing. I'm actually working in Belgium as well, so maybe we should meet at some moment.
Yeah, for sure. Are you in Ghent? No,
in Leuven.
Oh, okay, that's not too far.
Not that far anyway. I actually had a question for you and also a question for work bucket, working group 2 actually. So first, Kathy, maybe your question is, I think, very simple question. You were saying that you decide when to irrigate when the threshold goes below -1. Is this always the same, or can these thresholds vary? Okay.
Yeah, well, how we, because that is the crucial question. You see all these outputs, and that counts for all indicators. Yeah, for example, tree water deficit, for example, maximum daily shrinkage. We always need to have a reference where we say we take action. And in the example that I showed, the reasoning was, okay, we base ourselves on photosynthesis, and we did then a drought stress experiment so that water potential becomes more negative. And from the moment that we saw that the control trees were different from the stress trees in respect to photosynthesis, we said that is what in this case we take as an idea of the threshold. Yeah, but then afterwards you start thinking you could also even do it dynamically. Yeah. And you could also think, okay, maybe indeed we need a little bit of stress of a certain, and then take that as a criteria. So there are many possibilities, all depending on of course the needs, but also the challenge there. So yeah.
So still to be investigated further.
Yes, yeah. Okay. This was just it just for inspiring, sure. And if you look at it, it looks like kind of that we covered already, but if you go into depth, you see that, and that's also what Brunella was saying. You could then think, the Stacy, why is it then not yet a control? If it would be already perfect, everybody would be using it. So that is definitely for this team. And I hope with this team that in the coming years, let's say that we come to this applicable system. So no worries.
No, the work done is already impressive, but indeed good to have some challenges.
We need to put the rules somewhere.
Thank you very much, Kathy. And then I had also a question about the models. So I hear a lot of talking about mechanistic models, which I guess it will be the main focus of the work of the working group too. Then I was also wondering, is there also like room for more data-driven learned models?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
because the idea is about the task that we have at hand is basically that we need to have somewhere an indicator of the hydraulic status.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and of course, if well, in the examples that I showed, the information comes from the plant itself through the measurements, and then we choose for the mechanistic way. Why? Because then you also kind of understand it. But now that you see this clear link, one could also think, okay, we do it, for example, with AI type technique, or we come with another idea. As long as we can come from measurements on the plant, that we kind of create a tool, either for example, calibrating it, and that we can go to these decision support systems and better irrigation scheduling. So yeah, please, the more diverse we are, the more worthwhile the work will become. So
Perfect.
you're more than welcome in work group too.
Thank you very much. That was my questions. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, and then I see Ali. Ali, good.
Thank you very much, Brunella, and thank you, Kathy, for this impressive presentation. I hope you can hear me well. It's nice actually to be part of this distinguished consortium. It's nice to meet all of these experts here. My questions has already been addressed partly by Michael and Estefania, but I would like to ask you for these phenological curves. It's based on just a single tree, or it's a kind of average that you have collected from different plants?
No, the examples that I showed is from individual trees.
Okay.
Yeah, from an individual tree, so a plant-based system. Yeah.
But I assume it will be replicated in the same success rate for the other cases as well when you repeat this experiment. Yeah. And more thinking from the hydrological point of view, dealing with the water resource management, I think during this action we should somehow try to find some bridges to upscaling this results from the laboratory level for more dealing with the regional drought issues on the water resource deficit issues. So this is one of the promising results if we can achieve together. This will be just a comment on this. Thank you very much. And it was very nice again to meet you.
Thank you for this virtual comment.
Thank you, Ali. Good suggestion.
Thank you very much.
Good. Any further question? Well, while you think to that, I forgot to tell you before when we were talking about the working groups that you will meet also the co-leaders, the working group co-leaders during the first working group meetings for the different VGs, but we didn't select the task leaders yet, because the idea from the work for the core group was to leave it open to any proactive person who is really willing to commit on these tasks. So it's really these goals that we have within these projects are really open to everybody, to the contribution of everybody. So feel like it's your project. So feel like you are. It's not, or everything is not already set. We are all here to draft it day by day. You know, so there's nothing written on the stone yet. And indeed, Kathy's seminar was to give you an idea, you know, on how we are thinking to approach, but we are really open to any suggestions. So really feel free, you know, to contribute in the best possible way that you can.
Yeah, Can I add something to that? So also feel free, like if, for example, if you have a cool new sensor or working with that, but or not modeling, but you think this is an important input for creating models, then basically you're more than also welcome in working group 2, and similar if in working group 3. So because we need to work horizontally, and of course we have done some tasks in a vertical way, but so don't be scared to talk, because this project will only work if we keep talking across the working groups too. So don't feel scared because you don't have, for example, modeling expertise. That does not mean that you would not fit into the working group, because you could be a very beneficial person to then make the link with the other groups, and that is a bit the idea. Yeah, but given that Virginia presented that we selected in that way, I'm quite confident that we are on a good track. But after this seminar, if you think I should also select other than what I have done before, then please feel free to adapt as we go.
Yeah, I fully agree. And in this case, contact me, because unfortunately the system will not allow you to change what you have already chosen. But if you feel like going through the project, you would like to be involved in more working groups, just contact me and I will allow you to make the change. So I will try to reopen the system for that. Okay, there was one raised hand, but it disappeared. Okay.
Hi.
Hi,
Brunella.
Edrit. Hi.
Hi. Hi, Kathy. Thank you for the nice presentation. Really appreciate it. You know, my experience with sap flow sensors, tissue heat balance method, was that I don't know if it's quite effective as an for irrigation purposes. My advice was to use mainly dendrometers instead, because in case of sap flow sensors, you need to reinstall sensors each season somehow. And the other point is that the response of the sap flow to water shortage is somehow somehow pronounced only a few days after the moment when the irrigation should have been applied. So in case of use of dendrometers instead, they are much cheaper, and the output somehow reflects the xylem water potential, which is related to the soil water potential. So what do you think about using mainly dendrometers in this case?
If I can answer that from an academic point of view, then the two sensors, sap flow and dendrometers, basically capture the main processes. So because then you have and the water relations and the growth, and through the model you can separate those. And I agree that with dendrometers you can already do a lot. But from a dendrometer alone, you will not be able to quantify how much water that the plant has transpired, for example. And that's then the advantage of the sap flow sensor. But I fully agree. And if you think about from a physiological point of view, it's also logically that the dendrometers indicate the stress first, because the reason why it is because they show the shrinkage, and therefore they can use the water before indeed the stomates basically close and lower the transpiration. So it's a good thing if we find the first reaction in the dendrometer and then the reaction in the sap flow. And it all depends a bit. If you say I only want to detect stress and I know what my threshold will be, then you can perfectly do it with dendrometers. But if you say I want to quantify how much they consumed, yeah, then you you can also quantify it through permamontit, but then you are not based on the plant anymore. And there, I could also tell something about that on stomatal oscillations that are decoupled. So, indeed, it all depends a bit on the questions that we have. And therefore, indeed, like the working groups, probably it will, many nice topics can be covered, and the wider we put ourselves, the more tools that we might find, and maybe the result will be not one cool tool, but maybe 5 cool tools, depending on the questions that growers have.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good. So I think it's 4:15, and we are perfectly on time, because I think the idea was to keep it within 1 hour and 15, more or less. So if you don't have any more questions, I think we can say goodbye to everybody, and thanks again for your participation, and see you soon in the working groups meetings. Bye bye.
Bye. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.